Okay, I have my perspective grid. I'm ready to start placing things on the grid. To help with that, I will usually make a non-perspective grid to lay under my plan and elevation view. I'm going to make sure that grid has the same increments and scale as my perspective grid. So because my perspective grid was drawn at 1/4 inch scale with an increment every 2 feet, I need a 1/2 inch grid. Now I can lay my plan or elevation directly on this grid and easily see where my measurements line up on the grid. At this point, this grid and the plan and elevation are only for reference. I'm going to tape a new sheet of trace on top of my perspective grid, so I don't get confused which lines are important drawing lines and which ones are grid lines. I'm going to start out by plotting everything in my plan view on the floor of my room. So line your plan view up with the grid you just made and start plotting where things go. So I can see that there is a table that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and a smidge away from the wall. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and a smidge. So this is where the front of my table goes. Now in terms of finding the width of the table, I can count over from the other wall. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, and a smidge. So count that out. 1, 2, 3, 4, and a smidge. And the table is 1, 2, 3, and a smidge wide. 1, 2, 3, and a smidge. So that's the front of my table. This is where the lack of a vanishing point is coming back to bite me. I should have put that in. But it's never too late to fix that. Okay, vanishing point. All angles need to go to that vanishing point. Now I just need to find the depth of the table. So, from the front of the table, count back 1, 2, and a smidge squares. So this is where the back of my table is. Now I can refer to my elevation views to figure out the height of the table and then bring the table up in height. Remember, you can only measure on the back wall of the room. So, I'm going to bring this mark back. Where this mark hits the back wall is where I can measure from. So I need to measure up, looks like 34 inches. Approximately 3 feet. So that's the height of my table. If I bring a orthogonal out through that point, that should line up with the left-hand edge of my table. And then we just square out the front of the table. So this box here is really giving me the location where that table sits in the room. I could then start adding detail, like the thickness of the tabletop. or the thickness of the legs. At some point, you just start eyeballing because the measurements are too small to measure on the grid. Walls are even easier. So I know there's a window on this wall. I'm going to switch to the elevation that corresponds to this wall and put my grid under that elevation, trying to line everything up just perfectly. So I see that there is a window, and it is 1 square back. And it is a little less than 1 square up. So that's the base of my window. I can now check the width of the window, 1 and a smidge, so it's going to end there. And the height of the window is off the ground, 1, 2, 3 and a half. 1, 2, 3 and a half. In this way, you could work around your room, adding furniture, windows, and doors to the grid, using the grid to determine depths away from the back wall.